Public Account Committee is conduct a post-mortem examination. The Public Account Committee said that its control is post-mortem type is examine the accounts when the expenditure has already been incurred and the waste and misuse of power, if any, has been made by the executive authority. But this does not mean that the recommendation of committee are not futile. Thus, the general charge leveled against the committee is that its work is only post-mortem. It is true that committee work is only post-mortem. It is true that committee makes post-mortem examination of accounts. Its inquiry is old by the time its look as the problem arising out of expenditure, but this type of control procedure deterrent effect for the future. And if the administration is aware that someday some parliamentary committee would sit in judgment on its activities, it shall be more meticulous than otherwise it would be. Again, the committee itself pursues recommendation which the sports checks the department faults tell the phase of officials and reactions. Therefore, the probe of PAC cannot be dismissed or useless. Second is audit provides healthy safeguard against public money going down the drain. So, in case of governmental activity, audit acts as a watchdog of the nation's financial interests. The administrative structure of the state is so vast and its operations are so complex that it is impossible for an ordinary taxpayer to know that the money contributed by him her to the running of a state is being misused. Audit helps to highlight losses, waste, underutilization of capacity due to improper decisions at the appropriate level. The broad aim at the audit is to safeguard the financial interest of taxpayer and to assist the parliament in exercising financial control over executive. It is the function of CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General to ensure that the various authorities set up by or under Constitution act in regard to all financial matter in accordance with the Constitution and the law of Parliament and appropriate legislation and rules and order issued. The real duty at the CAG is that an auditor, and the primary audit function is to verify the accuracy and competency of accounts to secure that all financial transactions, receipts and payments are properly recorded in account and correctly classified, and that all expenditure and disbursement are authorized and watched, and that all sums due are recorded regularly in accordance with the demands and brought into account. And he acts as a watchdog to see that the various authority under the Constitution function in regard to financial matter in accordance with the Constitution and the law of Parliament and appropriate legislation and rule and order issued them thereunder. In connection with the discharge of auditor duty, the Comptroller and Auditor General can inspect any office account under the control of Union or State, including Treasury, and office responsible for the keeping initial or subsidiary account. This auditing is a tool which safeguards the public money and bring efficiency in financial administration. Next, audit, like the judiciary, executive and legislature, is one of the important ingredients in democracy. Under democracy, it's become imperative for the parliament to check whether the executive is spending the fund responsible, efficient, prudent way, and the purpose is served by the audit which show the inadequacy, if any, in spending in money. Thus, it is one of the most important ingredient of democracy. The primary purpose of audit is to ensure that money has been applied to the purpose of which grant made by parliament were intended to provide, and that the expenditure conform to the authority which govern it. The audit thus performed becomes an important instrument control of public expenditure for its instrument which makes the expenditure accountable. It has dual role to play. First is check the extent of application for by government servants of rules and regulation issued on behalf of administration, and secondly it ensure on behalf of legislation that the action of government have been in accordance with the view and requirement of legislation. The audit is not directly responsible for ensuring economy in the government expenditure, though it's working, and though the submission of its annual audit reports is bring to be a rational financial criticism based on accounts and subtle influence on the process of incurring expenditure after it has been incurred by bringing to notice the wastefulness in the expenditure. The staff of the audit department is always vigilant to detect inaccuracy and errors in the account. Thus, the purpose of audit is to offer financial criticism. Its value lies in reports pointing out the impropriety, irregularity. In this way, it serves as a vital functionary for democracy. Next is Parliament Department Committee have played a role in the analyzing the demands for the grants. So Parliamentary Department Committees over the year have been emerged as the chief instruments for analyzing the demands for grants and were created to exercise control over executive and particularly financial control. Committee consists 45 members, 30 of the Lok Sabha and the 15 of the Rajya Sabha, and the term the office of each committee in 1 year. For analyzing the demands for grants, PDS follow a certain procedure. After general discussion, the House is adjourned for a fixed period and consider the demands for grants for concerned ministry during the aforesaid period, and the committee make their reports for the aforesaid period, which is considerable by the House, which analyzing the demands for grants for concerned ministry. Therefore, the reports prepared by Parliamentary Department Committee act as a mirror before House to analyze the demands for each ministry. It further helps analyzing the performance of each ministry in light of reports, and the situation gets easier. Prepare separate reports for each ministry. At last, PDS playing their role especially well by helping both the House and the ministry in getting demands for grants. Next, budget is the more the economic horoscope of the nation. A modern budget plays a very important role in the social and economic life of community. In early days, budget being the statement of estimated receipt and expenditure had only objective how much has to be collected taxpayer to maintain necessary activity, legislative to what fund. In legislative government, budget was a simple statement of estimated income and expenditure. But in modern society, the function of government changed because government transferred to welfare state. Therefore, the activity of government tend to cover almost all aspects of social life. And government budgeting is one of the major instruments by which the use of public resources is planned and controlled. Budget affects development and production, size, distribution of income, and the availability of manpower. By imposing heavy taxation upon activities, articles consumption, it can encourage installment, investment, thus promote the economic growth, and by taxing rich, it get mitigate economic inequality. Budget is above all political document. It provides a glimpse of the entire philosophy of government. From the budget, citizen can know what benefits they are going to derive from and various plans and program of the government. And budgetary process of government is directed towards removing poverty and employment maladministration, and the budget is also most important tool of legislation control over public purse. Control public purse enable the legislature to control the executive. Legislative control signified no tax can be collected without its prior authorization, no expenditure incurred without prior approval. Thus, consider the budget can tremendous social economic implications of welfare of the people. Next is examine the role of finance ministry in the union government designing and implementing monetary and fiscal policy. So the monetary and fiscal policy are two instruments of business cycle, and the approach to business cycle depends upon the two policy. So in country like India, where after 1991 era of LPG is the standardization policy of government is based on the theory of John Maynard Keynes, propounded the backdrop of Great Depression. Keynes say that the business cycle was due to extreme swing in total demands for goods and service in the market economy. Like or the government has two types of economic policy to control aggregate demands: fiscal policy, monetary policy. When these policies are used to stimulate the economy during the recession, it is said that the government is pursuing expansionary economic policy, and they are used to contract the economy during an overhead expansion. It is said that government is pursuing contradictory economic policy. Fiscal policy can be two types: discretionary fiscal policy and automatic stabilization. In kind of discretionary fiscal policy change in the taxing and spending federal government for purpose of expanding contracting level of aggregate demand. In recession, expansionary fiscal policy involve lowering tax and increasing government spending. In overheated expansion, the contradictory fiscal policy require higher tax and reduce spending. The first way this can be through federal budget, and however this process takes long 12 to 18 months. Discretionary fiscal policy cannot be matched with the business cycle. In case of automatic stabilization, the progressive income tax and the welfare system both act as a increased aggregate demand. To decrease the aggregate demand and overheated expansion in India, all decisions regarding fiscal policy of government are taken Ministry of Finance consultation with other ministry and department. The annual budget is presented every year, which is document giving direction to the government in coming year regarding the taxation, revenue collection as well as expenditure of various items in the coming fiscal year. It becomes operational only after getting assent of both the House of Parliament and approval of President. So, however, monetary policy is broadly determined by the central government (RBI), and Ministry of Finance has no active role. The decision regarding change in the interest rate and money supply to contract or expand aggregate demand is the discretionary power of RBI. In recession, RBI will lower interest rate and increase the money supply, while in the overheated expansion, RBI will raise interest rate and decrease the money supply. Thus, the fiscal and monetary policy government depends on the coordination between Ministry and Finance and Central Bank rather than Ministry of Finance alone. Okay, now next question is what? The prevalence of multiple channel transfer of resources. So there are multiple channel transfer of resources centered to the state is stated to have compounded the problem of federal fiscal arrangement. So a notable feature of transfer in India is existence of multiple channel, which is transfer the fund. One such channel, the Planning Commission resolution of Government of India in the 1950, provides assistance by way of grants and loans. Okay, it gives grants and loans and to meet the plan requirement, and the plan assistant to state given the specific venture and degree of assistance as well as a grant loan component was decided on the basis of nature of venture chosen. Since 1969, however, the plan assistance to the state is given by the way of both grants and loans on the basis of formula approved by National Development Council, and the NDC is chaired by the Prime Minister and it's composed of Cabinet Minister and member of Planning Commission and Chief Minister. So the grants given the Planning Commission constitute between 16 to 20% of total transfer. The Constitution requires President of India to appoint a Finance Commission every 5 years, review the finance of center and state, and recommend the both devolution of tax and granting aid for the ensuing 5 years. When the aforementioned Planning Commission joined the Finance Commission's giving grant, the scope of Finance Commission become confined to recommending transfer to meet non-plan requirement of state. To date, 13 Finance Commission have been constituted, have submitted the reports. Presently, Finance Commission transfer 60% of total transfer and above. Planning Commission constitute 20%. In addition to the above two channel, various center ministry give specific purpose transfer to the state without matching requirement. And there are 200 ventures, like 200 ventures for the viewpoint, only a few are important. So the transfer system is based with many problem. Multiple transfer channel system work at cross purpose, creating serious problem. Focusing on transfer as fiscally, so disadvantage is the methodology adoption by the Finance Commission transfer that the filling the gaps between the projected revenue and expenditure has not only created serious disincentive but also result in inequality. The system does not attempt significant equalization, and projection of expenditure for proper states are met from a low base. As the projected gaps are filled through transfer, disincentives are created for tax effort and expenditure economy. And the disintegration made between plan and non-plan transfer also have segmented the budget with adverse consequences in fiscal management. Furthermore, the proliferation of specific purpose transfer led to inefficiency, and this problem significantly politicized the transfer system. And the intergovernmental policy institution in India evolved the context of public sector domination. Heavy industry-based industrialization was implicit planned development. With economic liberalization opening up economy, significant change in fiscal federalism become imperative, and replacing the public enterprises revenue with tax compensation, revenue loss from custom, evolving a destination based value added tax are some of the challenges. Given the increasing globalized economy, the state government are required to be efficient in their predominant role providing social service, equal role of providing physical infrastructure. So fiscal system has to deal with the issue of ensuring fiscal discipline to arrest the deteriorating situation of deficit and debt accumulation, the emergence of coalition government. So in order to let the competitive populism or adopting the policy, voter will disregarding the fiscal consequences, regional parties power at the state order in becoming pivotal member. So have led to several asymmetry arrangement also. Okay, got understand. So now what is the next question? I express the proponent of financial responsibility and budget management FRBM Act 2003 is ensuring the fiscal discipline. So the FRBM Act is unusual act as a parliament are usually directed at prescribing the law to the followed by the public or class of person or by the government in the dealing with other public or large at the section. This act on the other hand is aimed solely to fettering the center self from doing things that parliament does not want it to do. No party other than the government itself is legally bound by the act. The rule are even more unusual. The center is issued in order to constrain itself. So how effective is such legislature curve? Insofar rules concern their legal effects largely cosmetic. Government can itself amend them. If the 3% fiscal deficit target found unrealistic, a notification from the finance ministry can change it to 4%. And the only legal restriction may be that as the act use the word reduce a target which is higher than the level deficit. So if more guarantee are to be issued, the target can be raised to any desired level, and the portion of act dealing with the placing statement before parliament in hardly something that will cause the difficulties. So portion of economic survey and budget speech will suffice to prepare all three new statement and act welcome aim to eliminating the revenue deficit. And this target can however relax by none of other center a bad monsoon, international recession, oil crisis, national calamities, other exceptional circumstances. In such situation, hard provisions prohibition on deficit financing is also lifted, and this much can be done without amending the act. In the Indian parliament system, the government of day except then its lack majority pass money bills without difficulty. Indeed, the legislator cannot reject a money bill without toppling the government. So 292, which has not been invoked, the provide that the parliament may legislature debt ceiling does not prescribe the special majority, as FRBM Act can be amended routinely by simple adding a clause to the Annual Finance Act, way in Income Tax Act and Sale Tax Act. So over the last 5 years, both the center and state in the India have made serious efforts to reverse the fiscal assess. At the heart of the first was Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act mandated a calibrated roadmap to fiscal sustainability. And depth and extraordinary impact on crisis, central government invoked emergency provision FRBM to seek relaxation from the fiscal targets. And 3% of GDP included additional public spending, particularly capital expenditure, government guarantee funds for the infrastructure, cut in indirect tax, expanded guarantee cover for credit to micro and small enterprises, additional support to exporters. This stimulus package come to top on the already announced expanded safety to rural people and a for farm loans waiver package and salary increase for the government staff, all of this to stimulate demand. And because of this provision of the act like fact that Indian economy is not fully decoupled from the international economy, it more unlikely to achieve the targets of FRBM Act, and to provide the space for the robust growth of Indian economy. Next is the Comptroller and Auditor General is the prosecutor of with a law that enable its functions at judge without the power to sentence and litigant with no right to appeal. So the Comptroller and Auditor General of has been attacked by the senior politician in democratic nation. Article 148 Constitution provides the cake with the legal status of Supreme Court of Judge, and the cake terms the condition service has been determined by the Parliament under the Article 149. And the legislation is called the CAG Duties and Power Condition Act 1971 DPC Act. Okay, while the Constitution placed the CAG of the lofty pedestal, the DPC Act has denuded his position to level almost the helpless and as that the last Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Jafar. So criticism of CAG is rooted in the uneducated opinion, deliberate suppression, and the function of fact. To that can be added the deep-rooted bureaucratic and political antipathy and accountability. So CAG is only a second-level accountability check post to ministry and department, the secretary of which are the principal accounting authority and internal auditor, the primary custodian of national wealth. CAG is neither a policymaker nor a substitute for the administrative. Instead, the legislative reports faulty implementation, scientific lacuna that convert public money into the shadowy investment in the personal freedom or deprive the nation of legitimate share of revenue, the cake become a convenient for executive malfeasance and non-performance. Amidst the over the Lokpal, the needs of the strengthened KEG has been ignored. Efforts by the being made to create another populist but toothless white-collar employment exchange. Indeed, a layer of bureaucracy. Despite the several limitations, KEG is still credible, label and defense accountability in the shining armor, and amidst the overwhelming road, the office's unique combination of knowledge, integrity, commitment, and fearlessness. Indeed, the Comptroller and Auditor General India is the remaining pillar of the democracy. So this was about